There is a part of you you've spent your entire life pretending doesn't exist. A part you silence when it speaks. A part you deny when it rises in your chest. A part you bury under responsibility, logic, morality, fear, shame. But Jung said your darkest want is not a mistake. It is the clearest truth you carry. The want you hide the most is the one that reveals who you really are. And whether you accept it or not, your unconscious has been trying to tell you this every single day of your life. Through impulse, attraction, fantasy, longing, restlessness, fascination. Through everything you feel, but don't admit. Through every desire that feels wrong, too much, too intense, impossible, unsafe, or forbidden. That want is the truth. That want is your compass. That want is the rawest signal of your deepest self. But instead of listening, you spend your life walking away from it. You try to control it. You try to shrink it. You try to discipline it out of existence. You argue with it, shame it, moralize it, rationalize it. You call it weakness, temptation, immaturity, sin. You build an entire identity around not wanting what you actually want. You live a life that keeps you safe from your own truth. And then you wonder why something inside you keeps breaking. You wonder why you feel disconnected, numb, restless, unfulfilled. You wonder why moments of intensity feel like oxygen, but everything else feels like suffocation. It's because the thing you're starving is the thing that reveals your soul. Jung said the shadow does not hide your darkness. It hides your truth. And your darkest want is not about danger. It's about identity. It's the part of you that's been locked behind years of conditioning. The part of you weren't allowed to express as a child. The part you were punished for wanting. The part society told you was too much. The part your family said was unacceptable. The part your environment forced you to abandon. Yet that want never died. It simply went underground, waiting for the moment you were brave enough to feel it again. Your darkest want is the clearest truth because it bypasses your ego. It bypasses your persona. It bypasses your excuses. It bypasses the masks you wear to fit into the world. It bypasses the stories you tell to look good, sound good, or behave correctly. It goes straight to what you hunger for the most. And hunger cannot lie. Hunger cannot pretend. Hunger cannot act. Hunger is instinct. Hunger is truth. Hunger is the soul speaking in the only language it knows, wanting. Think about the desires you avoid, the wants you refuse to admit even to yourself, the ones that make your heart beat faster, the ones that make your thoughts spiral, the ones that feel like they pull you toward an alternate version of your life, the ones that terrify you because they demand you to become someone bigger than your current identity, the ones that shake the stability you cling to, the ones that expose the version of you you've kept buried. That want is not dangerous. It's revealing. It's showing you something you haven't allowed yourself to see. It might be a desire for freedom, for intensity, for passion, for expression, for dominance, for surrender, for depth, for creativity, for rebellion, for transformation, for truth. Or maybe it's none of these individually, but all of them at once. Because the truth about your darkest want is this: it is rarely about an external thing. It is almost always about the version of you that emerges when you imagine having it. Your darkest want reveals the part of you that wants to breathe in a world where you've forgotten how. It reveals the life you wish you were living. It reveals the voice you keep silencing. It reveals the identity you don't fully accept. It reveals the emotion you don't allow yourself to feel. It reveals the courage you're afraid to claim. It reveals the story you secretly believe you were meant for, but don't feel worthy of. And Jung warned that the more you suppress this want, the more distorted your life becomes. You start craving substitutes, people who aren't right for you, choices that don't fulfill you, habits that numb you. You experience attraction that feels confusing, impulses that feel chaotic, desires that feel wrong. Not because your want is wrong, but because suppressing your truth always leads to chaos. The unconscious will express itself whether you give it permission or not. And if you don't give it space, it will erupt in ways you don't understand. Your darkest want is the clearest truth, because it is the last piece of you that still refuses to lie. When you wake up in the middle of the night, feeling something you can't explain, this is that truth. When you can't stop thinking about something you don't want to admit, this is that truth. When you feel pulled toward a path that terrifies you, this is that truth. When someone awakens a part of you that you didn't know existed, this is that truth. The truth you refuse to face is the truth that defines you. But facing it means one thing: letting go of the life you built to avoid yourself. The identity built on pleasing others. The comfort zone built on fear. The choices built on obligation. The persona built on safety. The beliefs built on old wounds. Because your darkest want is not compatible with the version of you that suppresses it. That's why you feel torn. That's why you feel split. That's why you feel two versions of yourself constantly at war. The one you pretend to be, and the one your desire keeps trying to awaken. You think you're afraid of your want, but you're actually afraid of the person you would become if you finally accepted it. Because that version of you is powerful. That version of you is unapologetic. That version of you is alive. That version of you is aligned. That version of you cannot be controlled by fear. And that version of you threatens the smaller identity you've lived inside for so long. The one built on approval. The one built on caution. The one built on self-doubt. But here is the truth Jung would tell you now. Your darkest want is your path, your clearest truth, your inner compass. Not because the want itself must be acted on, but because the want itself reveals your hidden self. The self your soul has been trying to introduce you to for years. The truth is not that you don't know what you want. The truth is that you do know, and that knowing terrifies you. Jung said that the greatest fear human beings have is not weakness, not failure, not rejection, not loss. The greatest fear is the fear of becoming who you truly are. Because becoming who you truly are requires losing the version of yourself you've used as protection. And your darkest want exposes exactly that. The identity you built for safety versus the identity you were meant to live. When you feel a want so deep that it shakes your logic, what actually gets shaken is your persona, the mask you wear every day to survive the expectations of others. That mask wasn't built overnight. It was built from childhood, shaped by all the moments you learned that certain wants are too much, too unrealistic, too selfish, too dangerous. Every time someone told you to be quiet, to behave, to lower your voice, to be good, to ignore your feelings, to obey, a part of you learned that wanting was unsafe. So you built a persona to protect yourself from punishment, rejection, or abandonment. But the persona is not the self. It's the compromise, the performance, the edited version of you. Your darkest want threatens that version. It demands authenticity. It demands honesty. It demands the truth beneath the truth. And that is why you fear it. Because if you allow yourself to admit what you truly want, you can no longer hide behind the life you've built as an excuse. You would have to change. You would have to grow. You would have to confront the parts of yourself you've tried to silence. And growth feels like death to the ego. But ignoring the truth feels like death to the soul. Jung said the unconscious never stops trying to complete the self. And your darkest want is the unconscious pulling you toward the parts of you that have been denied. Think about it. Why are some desires soft and some desires loud? Why are some wants easy to admit and some feel like they could ruin everything? Because the clearer the truth, the more it threatens the structure of the identity built around fear. And that's why your darkest want is the clearest truth, because it's the truth you can't manipulate. You can deceive your mind, but you can't deceive your hunger. Hunger doesn't respond to logic. Hunger responds to truth. The reason you feel pulled toward certain people, ideas, fantasies, paths, or futures is because they awaken a version of you that has been waiting. A version that refuses to die quietly. A version that remembers who you were before you became who you were told to be. This is why your darkest want feels both dangerous and irresistible. It feels like you're being pulled into someone you don't fully recognize, but at the same time, someone you have known all along. That feeling of recognition, that magnetic pull, that deep inner yes you feel despite your fear, that is the self trying to return to itself. The reason you feel pulled toward certain people, ideas, fantasies, paths, or futures is because they awaken a version of you that has been waiting, a version that refuses to die quietly, a version that remembers who you were before you became who you were told to be. This is why your darkest want feels both dangerous and irresistible. It feels like you're being pulled into someone you don't fully recognize, but at the same time, someone you have known all along. That feeling of recognition, that magnetic pull, that deep inner yes you feel despite your fear, that is the self trying to return to itself. But people rarely allow that return. They label their want as wrong because it threatens their comfort zone. They label it impossible because it challenges their limitations. They label it immoral because it doesn't fit society's expectations. They label it irrational because it doesn't match the life they've built. But the life they've built is not the life they want. And the life they want is the life that would finally require them to be real. And realness is terrifying when you've lived behind a mask for too long. This is why your darkest want keeps returning. It doesn't go away just because you ignore it. It doesn't disappear just because you shame it. It doesn't get weaker with time. In fact, it gets stronger. It becomes more symbolic, more emotional, more persistent. Jung said what you suppress does not die. It grows roots. And those roots wrap around your decisions, your relationships, your impulses, your values, your attractions, your fears. They influence everything without your awareness. This is why you're drawn to certain patterns, certain people, certain experiences, over and over again. You are not repeating your mistakes. You are repeating your truth, trying to get your attention. Every time you feel something intense you can't explain, that's your truth. Every time you fantasize about a future that feels impossible, that's your truth. Every time someone awakens a part of you you thought was gone, that's your truth. Every time your want feels like both danger and destiny, that's your truth. Your darkest want is the part of you that refuses to stay dead. But here's the deeper revelation. The want itself is rarely the final destination. What you want is symbolic. What you want reveals what you need to become. For example, if your darkest want is freedom, it's not about escaping something, it's about reclaiming agency. If your darkest want is intensity, it's not about chaos, it's about emotional aliveness. If your darkest want is desire, it's not about lust, it's about integration. If your darkest want is power, it's not about domination. It's about reclaiming control over your own life. Every want holds a message deeper than its surface. But because the message feels threatening, you run from it. You decide it's safer to desire quietly than to live loudly. Safer to fantasize than to act. Safer to dream than to transform. But your psyche is not interested in safety. It is only interested in truth. And until you integrate your darkest want, you will continue living as the incomplete version of yourself. you will continue feeling that something is missing, that something inside you is unfinished, that something in you is awake but chained. People say they want peace, but peace doesn't come from avoiding desire. Peace comes from aligning with it. Peace comes from listening to the truth beneath your want. Peace comes from becoming the person your darkest want has been pointing you toward for years. You spend your whole life trying to hide the part of you that's actually asking to be seen. But your darkest want isn't here to ruin anything. It's here to reveal everything. It's the one place inside you that refuses to lie, refuses to shrink, refuses to die quietly. And if you keep ignoring it, you'll keep ignoring yourself. Jung said the truth waits, and it keeps knocking until you're finally brave enough to listen. If this video hit something real inside you, don't leave it unspoken. Like the video so the message reaches others who need it. Subscribe if you want more Jungian psychology that pulls you deeper into who you really are. And now tell me in the comments, what truth is hiding behind your darkest want?